everyone, another random video coming to you today, and I wanted to briefly address a little bit and go back to the Nostalgia Critic, and this time I decided to make a video briefly discussing the movies that he's done critical reviews for, mainly more on the negative side, and I wanted to address ones that I find myself enjoying. Now, I've already mentioned maybe a few that I have reviewed, like Moulin Rouge. I didn't necessarily particularly think the film is so great, but I didn't think it was as bad as he made it out to be, and if you watch that review, you'll kind of see like what I explained from what he explained as to why it's I don't think that the criticism of it really bothers me personally that much. And I just wanted to sort of talk about the movies that I haven't mentioned in particular that I find enjoyable, but the Nostalgia Critic doesn't really seem to like. And there are a couple. Also, I'll probably be mentioning as well, sometimes, again, you'll know this, if you know this, the Nostalgia Critic is like a character. So, some of the stuff that I'll mention, at least for one movie, is actually, it's actually mentioned by Doug Walker, but not by the Nostalgia Critic. Like, he was talking about movies just without being the character, and he mentioned this movie as to be one that he didn't particularly care for, but I liked. So, again, and this is just all opinion, you know, it's just sharing opinion, that's all I'm trying to do. I'm sure that there's people who probably totally agree with everything that he says, and some people that completely disagree with everything he says, but I identify, I think, more of myself as I find myself agreeing with him more than disagreeing with him most of the time, but there are instances where I feel like, for me, the film doesn't necessarily bother me, or I maybe know that it's not a masterpiece. Obviously not. A lot of the Nostalgia Critic films that he reviews aren't masterpieces, but I still kind of like them in some way, shape, or form. Or I don't find his criticism to maybe bring down the film for me for whatever reason. So, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit. Now, the first one I wanted to briefly address, and again, I'll put all of his reviews to these particular ones below, and then I will put in one where he does mention the one particular film where I say, again, he's doing Doug Walker and he's not being the Nostalgia Critic, and I'll be sure to put that in. But the first one I wanted to address is kind of one that I think was fairly popular when it came out, according to the review. And a lot of people really liked it, and it came out during my childhood, so I kind of maybe have a more nostalgic, maybe bias towards it. I'm not sure, but this movie happens to be Free Willy. Yes, I liked Free Willy, for various reasons. Now, the criticism that's awfully come from the review in particular has to do with, like, the main character. I believe his name's Jesse. And I think that criticism is fairly understandable. I mean, he is a little bit of a wild, rambunctious, and sometimes rude kid, but I think there's kind of a reasoning behind that, in that I think a lot of kids do act out like he does. Like, I've seen this. It's not like something that's completely unusual when I was growing up, because when I watched the film as a kid, I kind of understood that there were people that I was surrounded by that seemed to act in a similar way like Jesse does in the film. And Jesse, again, is like the main character of Free Willy, the main protagonist. But the Nostalgia Critic likes to point out a lot of the cliches. Now, I didn't really realize that these were really cliches, especially when I was a kid, of people being paired up with animals, or hi.
Did you print that now?
Yeah, I printed out. Yeah, I put it in already. It's all good. Sorry about that. But basically, I do understand his point with, like, his character being sometimes maybe annoying or maybe fairly rude, and I think his character is supposed to be, because I don't think somebody who is probably growing up in an orphan-like environment who steals and does things, I don't think that person is going to come out as like an angel, you know, like somebody like maybe Oliver, for example. Jesse is kind of like the rebellious kid, and I think it's his behavior is I think I've personally felt like a lot of kids have acted that way as he does around me when I was growing up. So I don't really find his behavior that unusual. So there's that, and then there's also like the cliches that I was talking about. The thing is I never really understood these cliches, and I know that there is like this kind of cliche, and yeah, we haven't seen it with a whale. I mean, I know that it's kind of doing a similar formula, but that similar formula doesn't really bother me. I don't think if people rehashing formulas is really that bad of an idea. I just think as long as it's done effectively, or if it's done in a way that's maybe productive, or maybe somewhat different. And I thought the somewhat interesting difference here was like, unlike usually where we have somebody maybe growing up in a within a family life, and we don't really see an orphan, I thought it was interesting that they decided to make Jesse an orphan, and him wanting to like find his mom and such. I didn't really see any other films really do that around the time I was growing up. I mean, I know E.T., I believe, although the main character did have a family, he, I believe he was raised by a single mom, but that stuff is never really explored so much. It's more explored his relationship with the extraterrestrial creature instead of that. And I thought it was interesting here how they had at least a little bit of more of like Jesse's kind of struggle, I guess, and how that comes and how that relates to the whale and all of that. So again, it's not a perfect kids film, obviously. It's got a lot of problems. And I will agree with the nostalgia critic that sometimes, even as a child, I found the way Willy talks, like the eing it can get a little frustrating, I think, because the sound is just so odd and kind of whiny. But it does. I don't think that should hold. And it doesn't hold me back from, I guess, enjoying it, I guess. Even the nostalgia critic mentions at the end that this isn't a terrible film. He just thinks it is mediocre in some ways, and I think he could make this argument. But I still find myself enjoying it, despite all of the criticism that he brought up in the review. I didn't think that a lot of the criticism was really fairly so valid, considering the fact that he was just going after like things like the cliches and the main character, really. And it seems like he couldn't really find anything else to really bag about, except the whole like tapping on the glass thing, which again, he even says that he messed up on that, because whales are very sensitive to that tapping of the glass, and that it can really like damage them. So again, it's just one of those things. Yeah, I liked the movie as a kid. I enjoy it now. I know it's not a perfect film. I obviously know. Oh, and yeah, he did bring up how the villain is sort of generic, and yeah, I'll admit the villain is pretty generic. But at the same time, I still love that popcorn scene, and even as a kid, and even my dad pointed this out too when he was watching. He's like, "That's wow, that's evil. Like, that popcorn scene is just worth it. And I think it has some good parts in it. I just don't think it's anything grand or great. And again, all of these films, I'm not saying that they're perfect at all. It's just that I liked them. I liked this movie, and yeah, I mean, I know it's not perfect at all. But I guess you could classify it as guilty pleasure if you'd like to. But yeah, liked Free Willy. Didn't really have problems with it. Or like major problems with it. Even though I know it does have some things that can be classified as problems. Those problems didn't really bother me, and didn't take away the sort of enjoyment that I got out of it as a kid and as an adult now. So I think that's really all I can say about Free Willy. Now the next one I wanted to mention was again a film that he mentioned when he was just being himself, when he was just being Doug Walker, and I kind of understand where he's coming from with this film, and to that I don't think that this film is super duper best movie ever made, fantastic, but I still like it. I still like it for what it is, and this movie is Gladiator, yes. Dog Walker does not like Gladiator. And I think it's understandable. He does make the claim about how the main character's not really that interesting. He makes a point about, like, the villain being so over the top. And I guess he just doesn't find anything to invest in. And I think that's somewhat understandable. But the reason why this film appeals to me in particular, the reason why I like it is it has to deal with history. I love history, so it's like more historical fiction history. So this is nice to see happen, that we finally get another Gladiator movie after Ben-Hur, after all many of these years. But I guess another reason I like this film too is I do like the acting. I think the acting is well done on everybody's part. And I think he even said he does like the over the top performance by Joaquin Phoenix, which I think is understandable. I think that's an understandable way to put it, in that the villain is a little bit over the top. But I think for that time period, it's understandable. These people and these rulers that ruled Rome were very, very vicious and very cruel. They did a lot of really horrible, insane things. These leaders were fairly crazy. From Caligula to Nero, we had a ton of Roman power-hungry emperors that did horrible things, and I think Joaquin Phoenix's character is no exception, because he has to kind of play that over-the-top guy, because that's what these people were. These people were over the top. These people were very bloodlusty and liked violence. That was thoroughly emphasized, and it's all emphasized through power again, and through jealousy as well. And I think all these kinds of things that you would see in that time period would sort of resemble a little bit of what happens in the film, and as to how people were so power hungry, driven back in those days, because Rome was a very powerful place. It's not like now where we're not so hungry for power as a lot of people were way back in the day. Even though you could argue to a certain level, but I mean, to the point where we're, enslaving people, and to the point where we're, doing all of these really horrible things to people, that seems to be like civilization has really moved from that extreme behavior. So it's fairly understandable that I think Joaquin Phoenix's character would be over the top, and he would be one of those characters that's fairly, power hungry. I think that's understandable. But there's also a justification that Nostalgia Critic brings up with Russell Crowe's character, Maximus. Yeah, I think Maximus is not really the most interesting character, but I think he goes in kind of the same category as Harry Potter, being that he's not intended to be interesting. I think he's just intended to be there so we can kind of get into him and sort of be him in whatever circumstances that come up, and sort of like take the experience that way. And that's usually what I think when I watch this film. I don't really think of so much rooting for Joaquin Phoenix's character as I root more for his cause, so to speak. Because, again, I'm getting into that mindset of, okay, I am him. You know, I am this person who went through all these things. It's kind of like that, and that's how I get the enjoyment out of it. And that's the way I see it and interpret it as. And I understand his points in that sometimes it's hard to maybe find some investment to care for Maximus's character, but I think he's not intended to be so interesting. But I really do like the choreography. I like all the sets and the costumes and all that stuff. That's all really nicely done. I like all that stuff. I like Joaquin Phoenix being over the top because I think that's how these people really were back then, and I think it's a decent interpretation, even though he is over the top, but I don't think he's so over the top as even a lot of other people, other maybe films. Hi.
I wanted to show you something.
Not now, Nicholas. Later. Can you close the door, please? Thank you.
It's just a house.
Yeah, yes, go, please. Not now. Sorry about that. But again, I understand the issues. I understand the problems the people would have with Gladiator. But I still find myself enjoying it because even though you do get these kinds of things that could come up and you could say like, it's not that interesting or it's not that engaging. I think there's an understandability when it comes to that. But for me, I still find it enjoyable. I still find myself watching it now and again. Because I really like the history, and I really like the sort of like thematic kinds of things that are thrown in there, as well as the whole, concepts of Rome and what Rome really was, and all those kinds of things really do appeal to me. But I understand if that doesn't appeal to others, and then they see the problems with it. And I think Gladiator does have problems, but I don't think they're so substantial to the point where I just get so angry or frustrated. No, not at all. But again, this is just me. So I guess that's really all I can say about it. But again, it's just me talking. So yeah, I think that's really all I can say about Gladiator. And I think that's really all the criticism that he brought up with it was, again, like Joaquin Phoenix's character being a little bit over the top, and then Maximus not being that interesting. And I think those really were the major problems that he had with it. But for me, I don't think that those problems aren't really so bad. And I find ways sort of around these kinds of issues to the point where I don't really notice it, and I don't really think about it so much. And I don't look from it in the same angle as he does. So, by the example that I kind of gave of pretending to be Maximus and such. So that's my viewpoint and the way I see it. Next movie I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I know this film is not good. I know this film is bad in its own right. I know that it's a little bit stupid, and yes, I mean, I don't think it's as bad as maybe like Ferngully, but I do find myself not really hating this film for some reason. And that is Quest for Camelot. Yeah, Quest for Camelot. Oh, what can I bring up with this? The Scottish Critic likes to poke fun at the fact, and again, this is where he made a mistake again, and thought that there wasn't an explanation, but there was an explanation that there was an enchanted forest, and there was actually also an explanation to, when if you watch the review, you'll see that there's a character that's injured, and the character, since he's lived in the forest like all his life, it is explained that these leaves can cure like injuries and such. So it's the explanations are there. The explanations are offered, and I think he even acknowledged that he did make a mistake with that. And I understand the issues of like it being too awkward at times, and maybe them ripping off maybe Disney. Yeah, they are kind of trying to go that Disney route, it seems like. And yeah, I know that the characters aren't really so interesting or that well constructed, especially with the main character, with the girl who thinks that she's like a fighter, and then she's always getting caught, and yeah, it's that kind of of problems. I know that those issues can really bother some people, but I guess for me, what didn't really what doesn't, I guess, bother me so much is all these problems, because I kind of look at this as a bad animated film, and I have points where I just kind of laugh at the kinds of absurd things that they come up with. Like how the villain has this like potion, and like he can turn like his henchmen and mix them in with like objects and stuff. I mean, I think that's creative, at least. I do kind of like the sort of enchanted forest that they have going on. And I don't think it has to revolve around actually being like the Arthur legend. I don't think it needs to have the same kinds of concepts. But if you want it to be related about, getting Excalibur home and such, I think it would work. And having it be like having to go through like an enchanted forest and such. I mean, I think that would the kind of plot that they set up for the characters to go through is, and then having a villain come after them and such, because he wants because he's kind of, again, yeah, you get the power hungry jerk who wants the sword, and yeah, all that power stuff. Yeah, it's fairly cliche. I understand that. But I guess I didn't really find myself being so bothered by it. And this isn't a like film that I would watch. Like, I wouldn't wake up and suddenly decide, hey, I want to watch this film. But if I was over at somebody's house and they wanted to watch the film, I would say, yeah, sure, if you want to watch it. If I was babysitting kids and they wanted to watch this film, I would let them watch it, because I don't think it's trying to insult kids' intelligence. I don't think it's trying to be insulting to the younger audience. I don't think it's trying to be that way. I just think it's badly constructed in big significant points, but it's not, I think, to the point where it insults me or insults my intelligence. And stuff is kind of explained, and again, they are explained, but certain things I think should be better constructed within the plot, and then you could have the characters kind of be more better constructed as well. So this is nowhere near as anything as great. This is not a great kids film, but I don't find myself disliking it. just because I kind of like these kinds of creative things that they do with it, and like having this like enchanted forest and them kind of going on this kind of a journey in order to get to Camelot. I find that appealing, but yeah, I mean, it does have issues, it does have problems, but as a kid, I didn't feel like it was insulting me, and looking at it now as an adult, I don't think it is insulting. I just think that there's just certain points, like big points, that really could be constructed better. And I think when a film has a potential of being constructed better, then that's when I think I go, okay, there is some effort here. It's just not put to its fullest potential. And then that doesn't really make me go into sort of the opposite direction of completely disliking it. But it goes into more of a category where I go, I like it, but I know it could do a lot better, and I know there's a lot of other kids' films that are a lot better, but I wouldn't be bothered to watch it. I wouldn't be... excuse me. I wouldn't feel like it would hurt me to watch this film. So that's just me. Again, I totally understand if you have problems with this movie. It's perfectly understandable. But I don't find it to a point where it is insulting or where I just want to punch the DVD. That's just not how I think about when I think about this film. I just go, yeah, it could definitely be better. It could definitely be constructed better, but there is some effort here. It needs to just be reworked and stuff. And then I like thinking about films that how I would rework it. Like, I can look at a film that's not so great, but still enjoy watching it because I can go, you know what, that's what I would have done. You know, like, that's what I would have done, or this is what I would have, what they should have done instead. You know, when I can think of it in that respects, then that's, I think, a good film. Or I mean, that's when I say to myself, not that I say that it's a good film, but I say it's a film that I could like, because it's not really insulting my intelligence. It's just badly put together. And I could think of ways to make it better, so therefore that's why I like it. I can just go, you know, I see the potential here, but a lot of the stuff that every one that I put on, like the last video that I did on the Nostalgia Critic, like the worst films that he's done, I just couldn't see how you could rework everything. There were just parts of all the films that I picked from that particular review where I just went, I don't even know how you would do this. I don't even know how you would make this somewhat intelligent. But here I can kind of see sort of the intelligence level here, but it just needs to be better constructed. And that's what I think when I think of this film. It's not a great film, but I still like it because I can see some parts of it that have kind of potential, and that I could just pick it out and just figure out what I would do instead. So I guess that's how I can find it appealing in certain respects because of that. Next one that I wanted to talk about, second to last one, is pretty much a big, I guess you could say, this is a bad film again, kind of like on par with maybe Quest for Camelot, kind of on that same level. It's called Congo, and yeah, I know this movie has a lot of issues. Tim Curry's performance is very over the top, but I still find it funny to watch at times. I think the whole, like, concepts that are in there with, like, going on this journey to go see the gorillas and stuff, I find that interesting. But I know there's, like, points where this film just kind of, it has those weird, odd, awkward, strange moments from, like, the leech. Again, there's a scene, and the Nostalgia Critic, like, describes it. There's the whole, like, big laser gun at the end, and there's a lot of over-the-top stuff in this film. But I think I feel about this film sort of in a similar context as to if you watch the Nostalgia Chicks review that she did about her guilty pleasures, like she put Battlefield Earth as one of her guilty pleasures. I think I feel about what she feels about Battleship Earth, what I feel about the Congo, because it just has this kind of really really over the top-esque feel to it, and I know parts of it are fairly dumb, and I know that it's really at times you just go, what were they thinking? But at the same time, I just think it has that kind of bad construction like the Quest of Camelot does, but I could kind of see where they were going with it and how I could have maybe done something better with it. I like films where I can look at it and say it has these problems, but I can watch it and I can go, you know what I would have done, you know what I would have done. I like doing that. And I think this is another film that's sort of like that, but it's in a sense where I feel like it has its fairly bad moments, but it's not to the point where I hate it or dislike it. It's just I know that it's bad. It's just badly constructed, but I could see the kinds of over-the-top stuff and kind of laugh at it. In a way, it's so bad it's good kind of a feeling. And I think that's how I kind of see Congo. And I did watch it. I even think my dad was okay with this film. But for me, I just find it kind of funny at times, unintentionally funny, and I can laugh at it, and I can find myself getting some kind of enjoyment out of it, even though there are parts where I just go, this is crazy, but at the same time I don't find myself really loathing it or feeling like it's insulting my intelligence, because I still feel like I could look at certain things and go, okay, this could maybe work, but I would have probably done this, so it would have been better. You know, that kind of a thing. So yes, that's how I kind of see the Congo. Now the last one I wanted to discuss is actually one that probably actually a lot of people do like on the backatglasses.com, and probably some stuff that they do like, but I like The Grinch Stole Christmas, okay? I like the live action version. I know it's not perfect. I know it's definitely not something that's like a Christmas classic. It's nowhere near something like It's a Wonderful Life, you know. I know that. I know that's not how it is. I know that, absolutely. But at the same time, I don't find myself really disliking it. And I actually find some of the stuff that they put in The Grinch and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the live action one, was a lot more interesting than in the original short. Because the original short is just so obscure with everything that is The Grinch. Like his reasonings for disliking, you know, Whoville and the toys and stuff, all that's explained. It's like it's the noise and it's annoying. That's all. It's really explained through it. But I like how in the live action there's at least an explanation. It might be not necessarily the most genius. Hello. Okay. Explanation. Apologize. And I know that it isn't. I know that it's not a genius explanation, but at least it's an explanation. And also what I kind of like is I like that the Whos are a little bit greedy in the live action version, and that they're not all like all happy and perfect angels in like the cartoon, like unlike the cartoon where they're like, you know, when all their crap is taken away, you know, they're all like, yeah, it's still Christmas. There's really a big problem I have with the original work that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm wondering if this makes sense to anybody. It's never made sense to me why in the original version that there is no, that the Whos are happy without their toys and such, and they know what the true meaning of Christmas is. Okay. Then why do they have these, what's the point of them having a Christmas tree? What's the point in them of having their dinkers and tonkers, whatever, everything, all the toys and things that they have in the original work, in the original Grinch cartoon short? That never made sense to me. I never understood. Even as a kid, I was like, that doesn't really make sense. Okay, all their stuff is taken away, but yet they know the true meaning of Christmas and that you don't need toys to be happy. Then why do they have toys in the first place? Why do you need a Christmas tree then? Why do you need all this stuff? Why do you need it when you know what the true meaning of Christmas is and you know you don't need that stuff? Why is it there? It's like, it kind of makes more sense to me to have the Who's be greedy and be fairly consumer and have them actually learn something. So not only is only the Grinch learning something in the live action version, but the Who's learned something too. I find that to be a lot more interesting than having it just be the Grinch who learns what the true meaning of Christmas is. So I think the original work still has its problems. It still has its issues with me because it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why a perfect Whoville town would need suddenly a Christmas tree and would need these gifts when they know what the true meaning of Christmas is and they know they don't need those things. Then why do they have them? What's the point? That never made sense to me. Unless you could say, oh, we kind of live in a Who world where we know, yeah, it's not really about the presents, but we still have them anyway because it's fun and we like to give presents, we like to do these things. But the point is we do like presents, we do like consumerism, we do like, having these things. And it just doesn't make sense to me why in this perfect world they would need them. They would need presents and such when they already know what the true meaning is and they would have them. That doesn't make sense to me. Unlike where in the actual live version it's sort of explained a little bit, that they are kind of, greedy and selfish. But they kind of learn what the real meaning is, and when they have their stuff taken away, it allows them to kind of process, oh, we don't really need all that stuff, we don't really need that. I think that's just a more interesting and more thought out explanation than in the short original cartoon. So that's really me. That's how I look at it. That's how it makes sense to me. That they would have this kind of idea of consumerism. And otherwise, why would they need them and why would they have them? If they knew what the true, real meaning of Christmas was, and they wouldn't need any of these things. They wouldn't need a Christmas tree, and then you wouldn't have a plot, though. That's the thing. You wouldn't have a plot, and that's kind of what the story is. That's why I've always had that issue, is just like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So, yeah, I think the live action version does offer explanations, more points than the original version does, because the Nostalgia Critic likes to treat the original version as such holier than thou, and doesn't like to look in the issues of that, and just says how much the live action version sucks. But for me, the live action version is not great. I actually don't think it's as good as the as far as maybe more humor wise than the original work. It's just that issue I've always had with the original work, into why they take the stuff, he takes the stuff away, but they know what the true meaning of Christmas is. Well, how come they know the true meaning of Christmas is and they have all this stuff? And then what's the point of them having this consumerism? So that part just never made sense to me, and that's really the only issue with the short, the original version. But I know that the action version has its problems. Jim Carrey can be fairly awkward at times and sometimes annoying. I think more as an adult he annoyed me more than a kid, now that I look back on it. But I still kind of like some of the humor, even though I know it's not the best humor. I don't think that it's spectacular, and I don't think it's as good as the original work, but at the same time I still like how there's a little bit more of an explanation for things, and it's a little bit more thought out as to different circumstances and to how even the Grinch came to be, and like how we get this whole kind of backstory and we get all this other stuff. It just provides more information. I kind of like that. I think Nostalgia Critic complained at one point about the sets being a little too dark. I think there might be a purpose for that. I think it's just trying to show like how even though they think it's like all light and fluffy to like have all this like consumerism around them, it's not really beneficial. And you'll kind of see how Cindy Lou kind of sees this as she's going around. And I think it is supposed to be intended to be a bit darker, just because of the whole dislike that the Grinch has for people in Whoville, and I know that it has its issues and its problems, but I don't find myself loathing it so much, because at least there are some things in there that I think I can find myself going, okay, this actually I find to be good into explaining something, as far as an explanation goes for something, as to why certain things are the way they are. Whereas the original version doesn't really offer that explanation, and just says, oh yeah, well, they did have all these toys, but they really know what the true meaning of Christmas is, you know. They know they don't need those stuff, but they have them anyway. It's kind of like that. And we do, I think, treat Christmas as a very consumer type-ish holiday. But I think it's more concrete in the live-action version, as far as the Who's maybe actually doing something and learning something. And I like how the live-action version, we get more involved with like the Who's, and in the original work we barely get anything. It's usually with the Grinch, and I think the live-action version has like a good balance of that. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's just longer. But again, I understand what people's issues, what they could have with it, whatever issues they may have with it. I could understand, and I could understand, excuse me, why you may like or dislike it. But for me, I didn't really find myself loathing it so much. I liked Jim Carrey's acting at points. I thought he kind of resembled the character fairly well. But I just think that he wasn't really given that much with dialogue to work with. And I think that's definitely a big problem with the film. But at times, I still find myself kind of enjoying it, even though I know that certain parts of it are just kind of over-the-toply insane, kind of like the Congo, and a little bit like Quest for Camelot in that category. But it wouldn't be like I was like during Christmas time and watching somebody or babysitting somebody, I don't know who, and they wanted to watch the live action version, and I'd say, no, you can't make me sit through it. I would sit through it because I would be okay with it. Again, I guess I don't find myself being irritated by it or loathing it in any way. I like certain parts of it. And I just think that certain parts of it are badly constructed, like Quest for Camelot. So I think that's really all I can say about all of these films. These are all the films, and I'll be sure to put a link to all of his reviews of them. I already did talk a little bit briefly about Moulin Rouge, but I didn't want to bring it up again because I already brought it up in the other review that I did. As far as the criticisms of that are concerned, and again, I don't think Moulin Rouge is a great film. I don't think it deserves any nominations or any of that stuff. But I still think that it's okay for what it is, and I don't find myself really loathing it or hating it. But I didn't want to really mention it because I've already mentioned it before, and again, I did review that film, so so yes, I think that's really all I can say about all of the ones that I've mentioned, but I'll be sure to put all the links below. I think that's really, though, all I can say about everything. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them, and until next time.